Dream Theater fans, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Let's Learn Awake guitar series. Today we will be covering every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, and a full, detailed musical analysis of Innocence Faded. We will also be covering a very difficult topic surrounding the band's innocence, or their loss of said innocence. Could it have something to do with James Labrie's childhood, growing up in Canada, being raised by a moose and surrounded by a goose? Could it have to do with Kevin Moore's constant gaslighting of the other members of the band, specifically John Mayung? Or could it be something more sinister? Could the band be guilty of crimes against humanity for playing too many notes? Let's find out. The intro to Innocence Faded is comprised of 4 different guitar parts layered on top of each other. The first guitar part is a distorted electric guitar playing power chords, outlining the chord progression. The second and third guitars are a double of one another, one of which being a clean arpeggiated guitar, and the other being an acoustic arpeggiated guitar. And the fourth part is, of course, the lead guitars, playing in 2 distinct octaves. And there's also an added 5th layer that I'll get to at the end. Now I'm going to start from least interesting to most interesting. And by the time we get to the end, we're not even going to be playing guitar anymore. The first layer is pretty simple until we get to the end, but still nothing too crazy. So we have an A chord, an A power chord. So ostensibly we're playing the 4 chord to an E chord, which is going to be our 1, B, which is our 5, back to the 4, G sharp. We repeat, back to A, E, then B, and then we have this part coming up. C sharp, A, B, G sharp, A, F sharp. Now the tricky part about that rhythm is that last F sharp needs to land on beat number 4, okay? And get dragged through the entire rest of the next measure. We're not in an odd time signature here, even though it might sound like it. All that's happening is a tempo change and a shift in chords, or syncopated rhythms. Let's get into the second and third layer, which is the electric and the acoustic guitar arpeggiating and doubling one another. These arpeggios follow the same chord structure as the other guitar. So we're starting off on an A chord at the 7th fret of the D and the 9th fret of the G. It's almost like a high power chord with the open B and E string on top. Sounds like this. And you just come up and down, take a little break on the last one, and then we slide the same shape down to the 2nd fret. That outlines the E chord. As you can see, we have E, B, B and E. That's the root and the 5th. So that's like a really glassy power chord. And then we pop all the way up to the 9th fret, play the exact same shape, and we play a type of B chord. This time we're playing a B with an added 11th, because we have the B, which is the root, the F sharp, which is the 5th, B, which is the root again, and then E, which is the 11th. And then we come in with this, which is just an A power chord, just like the one we played at the beginning, but only 3 strings are plucked. You're playing A, which is the root, E, which is the 5th, and B, which is the 9th, so it's an A add 9, and then we resolve it to an E chord with this G sharp on the bottom. And that's a G sharp, an E, a B, and an E. So we have the entire E major arpeggio enclosed within that shape. We come back around to the beginning, do the same thing, and then we come into the closing section of the introduction, which is a tempo change, and we go like this. So still sticking with the same theme of the open B and E string on the top, but this time we have perfect 4th intervals that are moving around. So we have what appears to be a C sharp minor 7, with those notes there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then syncopating to the upbeat of a B chord, and going 1, 2, switching to this, which is an E power chord, that goes right over the G sharp, and then to end it like this. Sort of a suspended chord, but I'm going to say it's an F sharp minor 7 with an 11th on it, because it sounds like this by the end. A very cool sound. Coming in after that is the guitar lead that everybody loves to hear, and here it is. So we start off by outlining the A chord at the 14th fret of the G string, like this. Into the E chord, sliding into the B chord, and then A, resolving to E. Now let's take a look at that fast shape there. I'm sure everybody has questions about that. This is an E sus4 shape just being played as a broken arpeggio. And we're starting up at the 17th fret of the high E, pulling off, coming down an E chord shape, and doing the same thing in the lower octave, except when you get to the A string, you're going to hit the 16th fret instead of having to hit the 14th fret like you normally would on this type of shape. So we're going like this. And you want to make sure you palm mute those lower notes as well. The lower octave does the exact same thing, but it's actually a little bit harder to play down here because of the shapes. So we're at the 7th fret of the A string, just like the start of the arpeggios that we heard before. Resolving into the E. And the same, all the same notes just down the octave. So you can see why that lower octave can be really difficult, especially on that fast part. But if you roll your finger down that shape, that bar chord shape on the 9th fret, you'll be alright. So at the beginning I mentioned I was going to be starting at the least interesting part and going to the most interesting part. Now as you can see, I'm no longer holding a guitar, because the most interesting part of this intro is actually in the bass line. Now remember, we were playing an A power chord at the beginning? Well, check out this bass line that's happening underneath, and tell me if you could figure out what the hell's going on. Now, did you notice anything peculiar about the first note that was being played? It's not an A. Now this blew my mind the first time that I heard the isolated bass tracks. Well, I was wondering what the heck is going on. First off, the rhythm is absolutely crazy. And I guess it's meant to go along with Portnoy's drum part with some of the double kick stuff going on. But that root note is not an A. Instead, he's playing it on an F sharp. So he's treating the chord like an F sharp minor 7. Even though in the mix, the guitar is probably the loudest thing, so you're thinking, oh, that's got to be an A chord. Everything else indicates that it's an A chord, except for the bass, the lowest and most important harmonic dictator of this entire situation. So we're starting on an F sharp minor 7. That's basically what's going on here, and we're outlining it by playing this rhythm. And there it is. And then the chord change actually goes to a B. So we're starting the E chord in a second inversion, but then quickly resolving it. And then we hint at the 5th of the B chord, which is actually a 9th from the original note. So John Myung is going all over the place with this, but hey, it sounds pretty cool. And then we're hitting right on the B. And this part's just... Another point of interest is the very end of the progression. He's playing the root C sharp. On the A chord, he's playing a 5th. Alright, so it's actually a second inversion A major chord. And then he hits the 3rd of the B chord. So that's a first inversion B chord. So we're going from root position, second inversion, first inversion, and then back into the regular progression with everybody else. So John Myung is really mixing and matching the inversions and making these chords sound a lot less boring than they would be ordinarily. This is why I said the least interesting part is John Petrucci's power chords, because, let's face it, they are. John Myung is really the star of the show, and I'd say that this is probably the most interesting part of the entire song, in my opinion. It's so subtle, and you can barely hear it in the mix, but it's there. He's playing an F sharp instead of an A. Call me dumbfounded, hoodwinked. So I'm going to stay on the bass a little bit longer because the next section is basically dictated by this bass line. So check it out. So all that's happening is we're outlining almost an A minor pentatonic type of pattern. So we're going like this. Notes in the A minor pentatonic scale: A, G, D, E, and C. Coming in on the actual first verse where the words come in, we keep playing the exact same thing, right? So no change. Now, when we hit the second half of the first verse, the bass has a subtle change where we play a couple hammer-on and pull-off type of ideas. So we're going like this now. Now this bass line doesn't really give us any indication of what key we're in. On face value we could say, hey, we're in A minor, right? Because that's what's being outlined. But I think we're going to need some more information to actually figure out what key this is in. Coming out of the intro, the electric guitar holds out this sus4 chord that sounds like this. Now all three John Petrucci's that exist playing these chords are playing that exact same one. So that includes the dirty electric guitar, which I'm on now, the clean electric guitar, and the acoustic guitar all playing it. So tripling this chord to make it sound extra thick and beefy. Once James Labrie starts singing, the guitar starts playing an actual chord progression. Now just like I mentioned before, I don't want to exactly state what key we're in just yet, because I don't feel like we have enough information to really determine that. John Myung is playing a pedal bass line underneath, while Petrucci is mostly using pedal tones as well. An A sus4, an A minor 11th, an F sus2, and a G sus2. No thirds in these chords except on the A minor. Now if we say we're in the key of A, this would be a 1, this would also be a 1, this would be an F over an A, so this would be the flat 6 chord, and the G would be the flat 7 chord. So check out the rhythm of this. 1 and 2, 1 and 2. And that continues through the entirety of the verse. This is going to be especially important when we start covering the keyboard part. So let's cover the keyboard part. Instead of hitting on the and of 1 like Petrucci does, we hit on beat 2. So we're following immediately what the guitar is doing. So we think about it like this, like a ping pong paddle. Boom, gim, ah, right on beat 2. The next one comes in at the and of beat 2. So the guitar is now landing on the downbeat of 2, and the keyboard is landing on the upbeat of 2, to continue the ping pong madness of Kevin Moore's imagination. Boom, jab, boom, bah. We continue the progression with the same rhythm. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. So that goes twice, and then on the second half of the verse, it changes a little bit into this. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2. So these arpeggios almost sound like small icicles falling from the ceiling. So you're outlining that A minor 11th with a flat 7, the 11, flat 7 again, 5, and 11, of course. And then right into the F sus2 for the next part, and then here. And that part's pretty cool because we're actually outlining the major third of the G chord. So kudos to Kevin Moore for actually making a resolution for once. Maybe he's the most composed member of the band. So let's hear what that last part sounds like in context for the second half of the verse. The pre-chorus of Innocence Faded includes probably the most tender vocal line I've ever heard in my entire life. The most breathy sounding vocals you'll ever hear from James Labrie. Put some headphones on and think about James Labrie breathing into your brain. So we start in a B flat chord shape on the 8th fret of the D string and the 7th fret of the G. And we go like this. Then move down 1 fret on the D string, stay there, and then move down to the 10th fret of the A, keeping the notes exactly the same on the top each time. Now the keyboard part with the rhythm and that little lead line on the top actually gives us what the chord progression is. I see the chord progression as being like this. B flat is the flat 6 chord, G minor is the 4 chord, D minor is the 1 chord, and C is the flat 7 chord. The string line on top is following the chords like this. 2, 1, 2, 1, flat 3rd, major 3rd, 2, 1, 2, 1, 5, and then we're hanging on this last note. We're hanging on the A, which actually turns the C chord into a C6, or an inverted A minor chord, so that's pretty interesting. The next section we can treat more like an instrumental pre-chorus, with Kevin Moore being the lead singer on this part with his keyboard lead. So I'm going to say we modulate it to the key of F for this one, because we have F to D, 1 to minor 6, F to C, 1 to 5, same thing again, 1 to 6, then 1, 5, 4, with that B flat chord at the end, don't forget about it. Now believe it or not, there's a hidden acoustic guitar track in this part of the song. You have to put your ear really close to the wall in order to hear it. The first chord is actually an F with an added 2, okay? The next chord is a D with an added 4th. So F add 2, D add 4. So here we're hitting a D major chord instead of a D minor. So we can say that we're temporarily modulating, playing the Picardy third of the D minor chord. Now a Picardy third is when you have something that's in a minor key for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden the third turns major. Alright, so this is a Picardy third on D. Strumming it like this to F to C, regular F to C chord. F, D with the added 4th. C, and B flat. Just hold out that B flat. So the keyboard's just outlining all the chords that are being run through by the guitars. Now here we're starting like this. So we're anticipating the D chord by going 5, 4, 1. Then we're going 1, 5, 1, 5, 4, 3. So we're actually hitting the F sharp on that part. So we're outlining a D major chord here. Immediately after that F sharp, we're bending into an F natural as soon as we hit the F chord on the bottom. And then, of course, resolving to the third of the C major chord, coming into the root. Alright, so we have 5, 4, 1, 1, 5, 1, 5, 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1. Then we do something very similar the second time around. All the same stuff, D major chord shape with the sus4. And then here we hit the C. As soon as we hit that high E on the top, that's the major third of the C chord. Coming up to the G, which is the fifth, and then the F, which is the fifth of the B flat chord. Okay? 3, 5, 5. Coming into the bass part for this instrumental pre-chorus, we can start taking a look at the time signature a little bit more. We're in a timing of 7/4, but it's subdivided using a very specific number of beats per riff. So we can think of this as 3 different parts that make up one entire measure. The first 3 beats go like this. The next 2 beats go like this. Pretty simple, right? And the last 2 beats go like this. And then you repeat the same rhythm on the next part. 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and then you repeat again. And the last measure is 6. Alright, so you have 3 separate measures of 7/4 and then a measure of 6 at the end to lead into the chorus section. So the only difference between this chorus section and the intro section are the last 2 chords that are played. And if you take a look on the electric guitar, it goes like this. Just E to A in power chords. On the clean and the acoustic guitar, we hit these 2. So perfect 4th intervals on the 9th fret of the D and G, and the 2nd fret of the D and G. So you're making an E, big power chord with the B and E on top, and this A add 9 to give it that nice flavor. So now we're starting to see that the verse sections are not in fact in A minor, they're in D minor. Alright, so this is abundantly clear at this point. So we're starting on this, this octave and then a high 5th on the top. So all you're doing is just holding the 5th fret of the A, the 7th fret of the G, and the 5th fret of the high E, and just arpeggiating up that line. Immediately after, we hit the C sus2, with a little jizz on there, and then we hit this F chord, arpeggiating the top, going to G, and then this, perfect 4th, 5th fret of the G, 6th fret of the B, open D in between, shift it up 2 frets, and boom, you're done. And that gives you that resolution there. It's like you're going from an F chord to a G chord. So kind of an interesting thing to do there. The bass line in verse 2 just outlines the chord progressions in root position, so no funny business like in the first verse where it leads us to not having any idea what's actually happening. But here we know exactly what's going on because John Mayong's playing the roots like this. Right along with Portnoy's drums. And some extra syncopation on that G at the end. The next point of significance in this second verse is Kevin Moore's keyboard part. It's just a single note synth line. Kevin Moore loves single note synth lines. 5, 4, 5, 5th of the C up there, down an F arpeggio, and then up a G7, and then it just repeats. And that's all there is to it. A single note line that follows the chords exactly. The next half of the second verse, we're hitting the distortion box and playing pretty much the exact same chords with a slightly different voicing. So all we're doing is hitting a D power chord at the 5th fret, boom, hitting the high E string right into the C, and then F, the same shapes from the first half, but that slight little difference at the end. A double pick on the D string instead of one. Bass part's pretty easy. Goes like this. Just rinse and repeat and you're done. Now, keyboard side, all we're doing is adding a high octave to that synth line that we heard in the first half. So just pretty easy. Let's hear all three of those parts played together now for the second half of verse 2. Coming out of verse 2, we have the second pre-chorus. Now, the keyboard part remains the same, okay, with the same exact chord progression with the B flat, G minor, D minor, C. And the bass line follows that with the root position, so I'm not even going to bother showing that to you. But the guitar does something slightly different. So we're starting at the B flat shape, going right down to the G shape, and then here, back to the G. Rinse and repeat, and you're done with that whole section. But let's hear what all that stuff sounds like together, alright? So I gave you a description, and here's what actually happens. After the second pre-chorus, we hit the second instrumental pre-chorus, which is this part, right? The F to D, but it only goes once. And then we're right into the second chorus. Now, chorus number 2 is exactly the same as chorus number 1, so consult chorus number 1 if you're confused about chorus number 2. Immediately following chorus number 2, we're hit with a little bit of a premonition. We're getting the end guitar riff during the bridge. We can call this like a clean bridge section. And basically it's a clean and an acoustic guitar doubled playing this triad line. So listen carefully. So that's a lot of triads. They're all on the D, G, and B strings respectively. And we're starting with this 999 for an E major, 987 for a B, 978 for a G, 777 for a D, 765 for an A, 756 for an F, 555 for a C, 543 for a G, and then this D sus with the 4th on the bottom, 523, and then resolving it to 423 with that arpeggio. Now theoretically it's pretty tough to figure out what key this is in and how these chords actually interact with each other, but there is a pattern. The first 2 chords, the E and the B, that's a 1 to a 5 chord. I'm going to argue that that's actually an incomplete version of the progression. So it starts it on the second chord instead of the first chord. Now, if you don't know what that means, I'm going to say that the G chord coming up here is the first chord of a new progression, of a modulation, right? So we're going G, D, A, which is a Mixolydian progression. So the G is the flat 7. The G is the new key. The D is the 5. And the A is the new 1. And then we immediately go flat 7, 5, 1, and then into the 5 chord of the G, which then becomes the flat 7 on the E. So we're always going to a flat 7 chord that eventually resolves all the way back to E. Now the second half of this clean bridge is a mildly complex series of arpeggios. So let's just talk about the patterns real quick. We have an A chord holding the 2nd fret of the D, G, and the 5th fret of the B. Right? And then immediately we go to the 4th fret of the A string to hit a C sharp, continuing with another note in the arpeggio, and then we're going to this second inversion E chord. And then like this, 2, 4, open B and E on the top that time. Now that's a root position E. And then we hit this, which is the second inversion G chord to root, and then a D sus2, where the root is actually an A. So it's a second inversion D sus2, which then goes to this harmonic, this natural harmonic thing. Right, where you're hitting the 7th fret natural harmonic on A, D, G, and then 12, 12 on the E and the B. Now this is a little bit confusing because you're not playing a chord. The bass note is an E, so we can say that that could be the root note. So what I'm seeing here is sort of like an 11, because you have the E, the A, which is the 4 or the 11, the D, which is the flat 7, root, and 5th. Moving into the next chord, we have a G sus2, root position, then climbing up to an E sus2, and then we have this D chord to a B, alright, at the 9th, 11th, and 12th fret. Now I'm sure you noticed there's a little scale run that happens that gets us out of that second bridge and into the chorus, and it just goes like this. Alright, so we're starting on F sharp, and we're climbing down an E major scale. Starting on F sharp. 2, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and then resolving into the A, which is the 4 chord for the chorus. Beautiful. Chorus 3 has one itty bitty change, and I want to see if you can spot it. Listen to it. Listen for the ending. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? You didn't hear it. Alright, so you didn't hear it. If you did hear it, I'm sorry, but you didn't hear it. We have a C sharp minor 7 going to an A sus2. And in the clean part, it's like this. So remember those perfect 4th shapes from before? Well, we're just doing it on the 6th fret, hitting the open B and E string, that makes a C sharp minor 7, and to the 2nd fret, which we know makes an A sus2. And the distorted guitar is just playing power chords. Then we come in right back to the re-intro, which is exactly the same as the first intro, with a couple minor differences. Once again, let's see if you can spot the minor differences. Minor difference number 1, which is actually a major difference. Instead of pulling off from the 17th like this, we're pulling off from the 19th. So just adding a slight amount of variety in there, and the low octave is the same thing. And it's slightly more difficult to play too. The other minor, but not so minor difference is the last note. We're bending into a high E because of the way the progression is. We're going from an E to an A, so we got to change the note. So we're going like this. So bending from the D, 22nd fret, all the way into the 24th, like a big old bendy bunny burr, 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 burr. And the lower octave goes like this. Same exact notes, nothing to worry about. Flat 7 into 1. What do you got any more questions for me? Get out of here. Alright, now we're getting ever so closer to the part that everybody's been waiting for. I think you know what I'm talking about. Now this last section of the song is, you can break it up into 2 halves, which is exactly what I'm going to do, but here's the entire section, just on the guitar. So check it out. So we're starting off with all the same triads from before, just like this, but we're on the distortion channel and we're palm muting E's in between. So now we know that we're supposed to have pedal tones on the bottom. And by the way, the bass is playing pedal tones all the way to the end until you hit the D chord, so keep hitting that E. Something different there. At the end, I actually snuck an E flat chord in there. Now that leads into the D chord by a half step, so that actually is a half step resolution. But I guess to finish out the phrase, yeah, we got to have that E flat chord in there, which is really far from the original idea here. Remember, we're starting in E, and all of a sudden an E flat chord is just, you know, moseying its way into here like it's no big deal. We actually have an E flat and an F at the same time, which are a half step respectively in both directions, which that's a nay-no. But we're doing it anyway. We're doing a nay-no. And then we hit this. So this is a very interesting way to come out of that, but it's really just going up to an F chord, an F sus2, sliding into a G sus4 because the bass is playing a G on the bottom, and then right into this, that little resolution. That's actually an A flat chord in first inversion going to a C sharp power chord. Now this is incredibly difficult to ascertain, but I'm going to make an attempt. Since we have a first inversion A flat chord going to a C sharp, we can assume that this C sharp is a minor 6 to the E major, which actually makes perfect sense. So we're going from the 5, the major 5 of the C sharp, which we could say is probably C sharp minor, so a 6 chord, so the 5 of the 6, going into the flat 7, major 7, chromatically to the E, and then doing this 2, flat 3, 3 run on the bottom, right? So we're still outlining the E chord on that. We're just coming in from the flat 7, E, and then F sharp to G sharp, which is moving to the 3rd. Alright, so you have the root and the major 3rd being highlighted. Then eventually we hit into the open E, into this lick. We just have this moving B string line while we're hitting a pedal E on top. So this is like a reverse pedal point. We have a note on the top that remains the same, and the note on the bottom shifts. So we have the 3rd fret to the 9th fret, D to G sharp, that's flat 7 to 3, so a tritone jump. Then we jump down to here. That's 1 to 9, 1, flat 7. And then we hit into an A chord, an A triad, which is a half step bend on the B string, C sharp to D, sus4, and then down the arpeggio. Now here this is the 4 chord, right? And then we hit the D, but with an A in the bass, so that's a flat 7 chord in second inversion. And then we hit right into an A power chord, and then to get back into it, we do 2 natural harmonics on the 7th fret of the D and the A to get back into the beginning of the progression. So if you thought that was crazy, let's get into the second half where it gets even crazier. So we hit off with the same progression. Slight difference. It's not that complicated, it's just 6 notes right in a row. And then you do the rest of the progression the same. Now we change up the second part. Instead of going D, E, F, and G like we did before, we go A, B, C, and we hit a C major triad. And then we come down right to the flat 7. So we're hitting a B natural here, And then we hit a B flat right after that, right? Crazy, crazy. So we're going, resolving to here, coming down the scale. This is actually coming down the F major scale, which is pretty odd. And then we do this. So this is a perfect fourth sliding from the 3rd to the 5th fret, F, G, F, D, which actually makes sense. So now we hit the really, really crazy part. So I'm just going to play this for you first, and then I'm going to break it down into little bits. So we have a multi-tiered monster here. Now the first part starts out by outlining 3 power chords, okay? And I'm just going to tell you right now, the bass line and the keyboards are just playing an A pedal on the bottom. Or really, Kevin Moore's playing an A pedal on the top, John Myung's playing an A pedal on the bottom. Okay, that's enough of that. Now JP, John Petrucci, is moving around like a madman with these 3 power chords, D, E, F, okay? Pulling off of the D and the A strings at their respective times. And then we hit up to this G sus. Jesus. So you're going from the 8th to the 10th fret, barring the 10th, rolling with your pointer finger, up to here, 12 to 14, and then more power chords, but this time we're sliding downward. Now this is a D power chord up top, and then to an A, to a G. Okay, so all pretty much loosely based in the A minor scale, and then this hammer pull-off section. That's all just an A minor pentatonic scale with this open string pull-off on the 5th and 7th fret. Slide down with your ring finger from the 7th to the 3rd of the A string, and then into the open string, and then 3rd fret open. Now this is all just like basically an A minor 7 arpeggio. If you take all the closed notes and you go like this, A, C, E, G, all the way through. Then we got to do this chromatic run-up. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which he makes it sound like it's 6 notes, but it's actually 5, which then resolves right into that A. Okay, so the next 4 chords are A, D, G, F. I guess since we are technically in the key of A now, I'm going to say this is A, 1, D, 4, G, flat 7, F, flat 6, which then becomes the pivot flat 2 back into the E chord. Alright, so a lot of half-step resolutions here. Well, the other one was a fake-out half-step resolution. This is a real one. This is an F going to an E. No funny business here. No funny business, Kevin Moore. Now after finishing that up, I bet you wish the song was over. Well, guess what? It's not. We have one of the most difficult guitar solos you will ever learn how to play, even considering Dream Theater's extensive catalog. This is a tough one, alright? And there's a lot of moving around, a lot of chord shapes and chord tones that you have to make sure you're playing. You gotta play it verbatim because it's obviously a completely composed type of thing. So before getting into the actual licks, we have to talk about how the rhythm guitar is structured. Now here's the rhythm guitar with the bass underneath, so you can hear all that and what's happening. So it's basically the exact same idea as the previous section, but instead of palm muting some of the open notes, we're letting them go free. And then we're holding the chords just like that, and then everything else remains the same. So there's not too much to worry about there. The bass is just changing very subtly as well. Instead of being in that high octave E, we're in a low octave E, but all in all, we're doing the exact same thing. So now that we have the rhythm figured out, let's put the lead, the solo, on top of that rhythm part, and let's see what we're working with here. Now that is a killer guitar solo, probably one of the best in existence. Tons of chord tones, tons of scales moving along with the chords, mode mixture, all that good stuff. And we follow all the chords to a T, which is the important part. So as I'm going through these notes, I'm going to compare them to the chord progression underneath so you can really get a good idea, good firm grasp on what John Petrucci is trying to communicate to you. So this is a very long and complex solo, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this into 8 different sections, alright? I'll show you at full speed, I'll break it down, and I'll play it in slow motion. Section 1 is going to go like this. The first lick we're hopping into is a whole step bend on the 7th fret of the B, okay? This is outlining the E chord. And that's it. The E chord is done. Following that, we do this. That's a 5 to 7 trill over the B chord. Okay, 5th fret, 7th fret, which would actually equate to the sus4 and the 5th, and then going to the root. Alright, so 4, 5, 1. Pretty easy. The next part, that all goes over the G chord. It's just an arpeggio. 1, 5, 3, right into the D chord. Major 3rd, perfect 5th, 1. So a first inversion D triad. Resolving right into the major 3rd of the A chord. Alright, so as you can see, resolution, chord tones, everything you need to make this a smash success. Here's section number 2. The first lick, this part, that goes over the F chord, okay? So, right there. That's just D, E, and F, alright? So we're hitting that F natural to signify that we're aware that that's what the chord is. Then in this bend, we're actually resolving to the C chord. Alright, which is more like a C6 because the A on the top. But hey, it's not quite a chord tone, but it's pretty damn close. The next 2 notes go like this. That's over the G chord, and then this. The A going to a B flat there is actually like an E flat Lydian, right? So if you have an E flat on the bottom, and you do the 5th, which is the B flat, to the A, which is the sharp 4. Right? So that's the sound you get. It's pretty cool that he can sneak something so sophisticated in there in such a short window of time. Now here we're outlining the D chord. So we're just bending up to the F sharp, and then coming like that, bend and release. We're just hitting 2s and 3s, man. This is just Mary Had a Little Lamb, that's it. So that section's slow. Section 3 gives us our first fun lick. So we're starting to hint at some fast arpeggios here. That's all an F major chord, which goes right along with the progression. And then here we're hitting the G chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 notes to get through that. But it pretends to be triplets, right? So it's like more like 8 notes within that amount of time. And then we come right into the C and the C sharp, which goes right along with the riff. And that last part is just doing the same thing but up an octave and just hitting the root and the third of the E chord. So section 3 is slow. This next part outlines some E pentatonic ideas, mostly around an E6 chord and then later going to an E7 chord, like this. The first part of the lick goes down this shape. We're starting at the 16th fret of the high E string and coming down that pentatonic sounding shape. We're just skipping the F sharp. So we're actually coming down an E6 chord. 16, 12, 14, 12 on the B, and then 13 on the G. But what you got to do to get down this, you're going to pick on the 16th, then you're going to do a rake, an up rake, and then a pull off into the 12th fret. You see that? That's the best way to get those notes out that quickly. And then right into an upstroke on the 13th fret. Repeat the same picking pattern for this. Here we're ending on an F sharp instead. But it's almost like a C sharp minor pentatonic idea, which is an E major pentatonic idea, right? And then we continue it down to the B string and actually end on the C sharp, right? So remember that E6 idea I was talking about? That's exactly what this is. And then we go here. So here we're just sliding into the G sharp, the major third of the E chord, have this E triad shape. 13, 12, 12, bend on the 15, which is actually the flat 7, right? So you're bending it up to the root, and then you're tapping the high octave, which is the 22nd fret, right? And you want to add vibrato right after you tap that note. So static, vibrato. It's actually harder to play slow than it is fast. Section 5 kind of reinforces some of the earlier ideas, bends into chord tones. So we start off outlining the E chord, then to G, to the A, right? So you're kind of like bypassing some of the other ones while still, retaining the sense of the progression. But those are the important points to note with that series of resolutions. Section 6 goes like this. Once we hit the F chord, we're doing this. So that's a string skip bend riff. That's kind of cool. That's something Chuck Berry never thought of doing. So we're bending into the perfect fifth of the F, to the root, to the major third. That's all you're doing. And then this series of bends is on the C chord. So you're bending into the major third of the C, up to the fifth, bend and release, down to the fifth on the bottom octave. Once you hit the E flat, you're doing this, which just goes through an E flat major 7 arpeggio. For the D sus section, we're arpeggiating those two chords. So this is a D sus arpeggio with string skipping involved. Notice how we're hitting the 17th fret on the D string. And then we're going right down a D major arpeggio with this shape. Try to alternate pick all of those. Right? Then we start going right along with an octave version of the lower guitar part. And then we're just doing a straight up like a D minor blues thing here, which is kind of welcome after all this complex nonsense. Of course, the easy parts can't last very long. This section, section 7, harmonizes that really fast power chord riff from before. Yes, it harmonizes it in a perfect fifth and then goes into octave mode. So check this out. Pretty nuts, right? Harmonizing something that's already incredibly difficult to play. So harmonizing that in perfect fifths actually creates add 9 chords. So if we play it as like a chord block, D add 9, E add 9, and F add 9, which adds some really cool colors on top of that pedal tone A. So let me play that slowly for you. You're doing a lot of the same motions, just on different strings. So just pay attention to where the positions are. So we're starting at the 9th fret of the G, moving up, power chords, sliding into that sus, and then doing this. That's a super important pattern to memorize here. That's that A minor 7 type of shape, which then leads into our chromatic hailstorm, right? Just leading up to A, and boom, you're just outlining the root notes of those other 4 chords that we were playing in the rhythm guitar. Of course, we saved the best for last. Section 8, all arpeggios for the most part, so pay attention to what's going on here. So let's break it down. We start with an E major arpeggio, right? Goes along right with the chord progression. Alright, so slowly. We're hitting the B for a split second. Then we're going to a G arpeggio starting on the B string, all the way down to the A, and then going into a D to an A arpeggio. So it's pretty intuitive. It just goes between those shapes, and once you learn how to get that pattern in there, it's really not that hard. On the A and the D strings you have this shape. On the D and the G strings you have that shape as well. And on the B string you're just stretching that major third. The first one starts here, move it up to here, and then move it up to here. It's not easy, not easy stuff at all. Coming in with the F chord, we have this arpeggio. Resolving to the C. Alright, so string skipping there as well. That's the common theme here, string skipping. We go into the G arpeggio, to the E flat, which we're going to use a G minor arpeggio to outline that. A G minor on top of an E flat is an E flat major 7. After that G minor, we hit the D sus section, where we hit a double note from the 15th to the 20th, you see? That's the same note, just on a different string. But it creates a cool sound. Then we resolve it to the 19th fret. So here we're descending down a D minor blues scale. And then we're resolving into an F arpeggio to a C arpeggio, right? So that's interesting. We actually don't hit a C there. For the very last part, we use a G6 chord. So we're starting on an E. That's almost like an E minor arpeggio. Actually, it is an E minor arpeggio. If you put an E minor arpeggio on top of a G, it's a G6. So just another example of having a chord on top of another chord. So you have E minor on top of the G, and then obviously going down D to B, which is the 5th to the major 3rd, and then finally we get to end it with this, which is once again just an octave version of the rhythm guitar. Here's that section in slow motion, and then we're finished off with this song. Thank you everybody so much for coming along this journey to figure out why Dream Theater lost their innocence at such an early age. I think they lost their innocence as soon as Kevin Moore left the band, because these compositions are amazing. But here's the thing, Kevin Moore didn't have a lot to play during this song. Did you notice that? There's a lot of sections where he's actually just laid out completely, namely the chorus section. What's Kevin Moore doing during that? I have no idea. But it doesn't really matter. This song is amazing. Amazing compositions, great arrangements. The chord progressions are all over the place, but they're contained, right? So that's the idea. That's a theme of Dream Theater songs. All over the place, but contained, especially these early songs. If you want to support the channel further, just go to my PayPal tip jar. It's in the description, where you could just do a one-time donation. Or you can go to subscribestar.com/RomanOva Music, and you can donate whatever you want per month if you really like the stuff. Any little bit helps. These are, like I said before, very labor intensive, and it requires a lot of time and energy to complete. And I know, you guys appreciate this stuff, so I want to keep going. But in order for me to do that, it's got to be worth my while. All right? What is fair is fair.